Where the Buffalo No Longer Roamed, by the Smithsonian Institution, adapted by Newsela staff June 7, 2017. Cheers greeted the telegram that arrived in New York City from Promontory Summit, Utah, at 3:05 p.m. on May 10, 1869. It announced the long-awaited completion of one of the greatest engineering accomplishments of the 19th century. The last rail is laid, the last spike driven. The Pacific Railroad is completed. The point of junction is 1,086 miles west of the Missouri River and 690 miles east of Sacramento City. The telegram trumpeted news of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. After more than 6 years of backbreaking labor, East officially met West with the driving of a ceremonial golden spike. In City Hall Park in Manhattan, the announcement was greeted with the firing of 100 guns. Bells rang out and celebrations were held across the country. In Utah, railroad officials and politicians posed for pictures, while Chinese laborers from the West and Irish, German, and Italian laborers from the East were hidden from view. Not long after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Pacific Railway Act of 1862, railroad financier George Francis Train proclaimed with great enthusiasm that the Great Pacific Railway is commenced. Immigration will soon pour into these valleys. 10 millions of emigrants will settle in this golden land in 20 years. This is the grandest enterprise under God. Impact of the railroad was destructive. Yet Train could not imagine the full and tragic effect of the Transcontinental Railroad. It would destroy the lives of countless Native Americans and also wipe out the tens of millions of buffalo they needed to survive. These animals, which had roamed freely upon the Great Plains since the last ice age 10,000 years ago, were nearly driven to extinction as a result of the railroad. By the 1860s, deadly European diseases and hundreds of wars with white settlers had already killed off untold numbers of Native Americans across the continent. The U.S. government had signed nearly 400 treaties with the Plains Indians, but the pressures of manifest destiny and the need to protect railroads led to greater expansion in the West. In the end, the majority of these treaties were broken. General William Tecumseh Sherman, a Union hero in the U.S. Civil War, commanded U.S. troops in the American West after the war, and his top priority was to protect the construction of the railroads from Native American attacks. Outraged by the Battle of the Hundred Slain, where Lakota and Cheyenne warriors ambushed and killed a troop of 81 U.S. cavalry in Wyoming, Sherman had argued for a relentless campaign against Native Americans, even to their extermination, men, women, and children. When Ulysses S. Grant assumed the presidency in 1869, Sherman was promoted, and General Philip Henry Sheridan, whose intentions toward the Native Americans were equally ruthless, assumed Sherman's command. Sheridan massacred the Native Americans. The Army's troops were well equipped for fighting against conventional enemies, but the guerrilla tactics of the Plains tribes confounded them at every turn. As the railways expanded, they allowed the rapid transport of troops and supplies to areas where battles were being waged. Sheridan was soon able to mount the kind of offensive he desired. In the winter campaign of 1868-69 against Cheyenne encampments, Sheridan moved to destroy the Indians' food, shelter, and livestock. One of the best-known surprise raids took place at dawn during a November snowstorm in Oklahoma, which was known as Indian Territory at the time. Sheridan ordered the nearly 700 men of the 7th Cavalry, commanded by George Armstrong Custer, to destroy villages and ponies, to kill or hang all warriors, and to bring back all women and children. Custer led a surprise attack on a Cheyenne village on the Washita River, where his men attacked people as they fled from lodges. Despite orders to capture women and children, cavalry scouts reported seeing them pursued and killed without mercy. The event became known as the Washita Massacre. The Transcontinental Railroad made Sheridan's strategy of total war much more effective. In the mid-19th century, it was estimated that 30 million to 60 million buffalo roamed the plains. Native Americans were careful not to overhunt. Even men like William Buffalo Bill Cody, who was hired by the Kansas Pacific Railroad to hunt the bison in order to feed thousands of rail laborers, could not make much of a dent in the buffalo population. In mid-century, Trappers who had depleted the beaver population of the Midwest began trading buffalo fur. The result was an estimated 200,000 buffalo killed annually. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad accelerated this process of decimating the species. Killing buffalo for sport. Massive hunting parties began to arrive in the West by train, with thousands of men packing .50 caliber rifles. Unlike the Native Americans or Buffalo Bill, who killed for food, clothing, and shelter, these hunters killed mostly for sport. The railroads began to advertise excursions for hunting by rail, where trains encountered massive herds alongside or crossing the tracks. Hundreds of men aboard the trains climbed to the roofs and took aim or fired from their windows, leaving countless 1,500-pound animals where they died. Native Americans looked on with horror as the prairies filled with rotting buffalo carcasses. Some people made efforts to save the buffaloes, but Sheridan and others pointed out that destroying the buffalo meant wiping out Native Americans' main food source, and their arguments won the day. The devastation of the buffalo population signaled the end of the Indian Wars, and Native Americans were pushed into reservations. By the end of the 19th century, only 300 buffalo were left in the wild. It was only then that Congress finally took action, outlawing the killing of any animals in Yellowstone National Park, where the only surviving buffalo herd could be protected. Conservationists established more wildlife preserves, and the species slowly rebounded so that today there are more than 200,000 bison in North America. Sheridan acknowledged the role the railroad had played in destroying the buffalo, defeating the Native Americans, and changing the West with unimaginable speed. In an 1878 report, he wrote about the Indian Wars. "We took away their country and their means of support, broke up their mode of living, their habits of life, introduced disease and decay among them, and it was for this and against this they made war. Could anyone expect less? Then why wonder at Indian difficulties?